Good morning. We're going to talk about different ways to improve our life. And I know that a lot of us already know these things. I'm just saying this because I needed to remember again many of the points. And the other thing I'm going to teach on, I needed to remind myself. I have to always go back and um, and remind myself and remember how to bring change and remember how to have a good attitude and remember how to be whole and how to be at peace. And so, what I'm talking about, I'm sure you already know, but as for me, I needed a refresher. And I would assume that all of us, when we've been saved 35, 40 years, sometimes we need a refresher on ways to activate ourselves, to improve our life, and to have the kind of life that we always wanted. Now, I'm going to talk about something that I know that you already know about, but I want to encourage you even more, and it's others. No one is useless in this world who lightens the burdens of another. William Booth started the Salvation Army. General Booth and his wife Catherine over 150 years ago. The Salvation Army was founded in 1865 as an army of volunteers who would bring salvation to the poor, destitute, and hungry by meeting both their physical and their spiritual needs. It is a mission of the Salvation Army that still comes out today in 127 countries. Now, General William Booth in 1910, he was nearing the end of his life. And he was not going to be able to go to this convention. He had become an invalid and his eyesight was so poor that he basically couldn't see. And no one understood that this would be his last Christmas, that by the next convention he would pass. But General Booth's health was so poor that he couldn't go. And so what some people suggested to General Booth was that he send a telegram. Well, back then telegrams were very expensive. And so he really thought about his life. He really thought about the Salvation Army's mission. He really thought about all the years that he had put in with this Salvation Army. And he sent a telegram. Well, when the thousands of delegates met, the moderator announced that Booth would not be able to be present because of his failing health and eyesight. Gloom and pessimism swept over the floor of the convention. Then the moderator announced that Booth had sent a message. So the speaker opened the message and he waited. He paused and he waited until the count of 15. And then he says in a very loud voice, others. General Booth's whole life, his whole mission, his whole ministry, he wrapped up in one word that he wanted to give all the delegates. And that one word was others. It is more blessed to make one happier and more to be envied to give than to receive. That's Acts 20:35. There is a great joy in giving. There is a feeling of great satisfaction when we help others. We are not only improving their lives, we improve our own. One of the best ways to have a better life is others. Now see, the Bible is full. The Word of God is full of contradictions. This world tells us to live one way, but the Word of God tells us to live another. And I'm just going to go over some of those because all of them is about how to live with other people. The world tells us to push our way through to the front of the line, to push to the top of the ladder if we want to be first. But the Bible tells us that the last will be first and the first will be last. That's Matthew 20:16. The world tells us to be stingy and greedy in order to have enough. But the Word of God tells us that when we give, it will be given to us. Good measure, pressed down, shaken, and running over. That's Luke 6:38. Now, it just doesn't say we're going to be given a little. It says this, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. The world tells us to hate our enemies. hold grudges, but the Word of God tells us to love our enemies and to pray for those who persecute us. That's Matthew 5:44. The world tells us to promote ourselves and to boast about our accomplishments in order to be considered great. But the Word of God says that the greatest among you will be your servant. Matthew 23:11. The world even says that if we don't take care of ourselves, no one else will. But the Bible tells us that a man reaps what he sows. Galatians 6:7. And if we sow into other people's lives, then God will bring a harvest of good things into ours. Galatians 6:8. The promises that God makes us to those who reach out and help others are quite amazing. Blessed, happy, fortunate, to be envied is he who considers the weak and the poor. The Lord will deliver him in the time of evil and trouble. The Lord will protect him and keep him alive. He shall be called blessed in the land, and you will not deliver him to the will of his enemies. The Lord will sustain, refresh, and strengthen him on his bed of languishing. All who of you who consider the Lord will turn, change, and transform into his illness. In other words, the illness can't stay, it has to go. The Lord's way of doing things is always better. See, but it isn't a natural way for our brain to think. We have to really grab a hold of the Word and apply it, because the way the world would have us live is not the way that God says that brings us the best life we could have. Acts 20:35. It is more blessed, makes one happier, and more to be envied, to give than to receive. How can I be more blessed when I'm giving, helping, or serving others? It seems like it would be the opposite, but the truth is so much different. When I help others, I help myself. When we take our focus off of ourselves and begin looking for ways to help others serve others, we can be amazed at how much better each day is. Helping others into practice. Take a little time simply to observe around you. Where does somebody need help? What are their people's needs? How can you help them? How can you be the most effective? Leave encouraging notes for friends or families. Call someone today that you haven't talked to in a while and tell them you were thinking about them and how much you appreciate them. Set a goal. Make at least 3 people smile today by giving a real, true, sincere compliment. Reach out.